Putain. Hello everyone and welcome in this new video from the channel Valo Painting Studio. Today we are going to learn how to paint the ghouls from the Warband, the Grymwatch for the game Warhammer Underworlds. You can also use this tutorial to paint the ghouls from Legends of Nagash or Flesh Eater Coats armies for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The color scheme that I chose is directly inspired by the cover of the book Ghoul Slayer. You will find here the complete list of the colors that I used for this tutorial. This list is mainly composed by Citadel and Vallejo paints. The skin tone of the model is mainly treated by airbrush. I begin with a mix of Ultron Grey, Sota Green and Dunstan that I apply overall the model. Please note that I used a grey undercoat for this model. Then I apply my first highlight by adding a little bit more Ultron Grey to the previous mix. I'm spraying this color with a 45-degree angle. This way I am leaving the previous mix only in the darker places of the model. You can spray this color directly on the face to give it a proper light. You can now proceed with the second highlight of pure Ultron Grey. This time we are spraying with a 60-degree angle. This way you can provide a much more zenithal highlight. Once again you can spray this color directly on the face. Once the base coats are dry, you can apply the first shade of the miniature. We are using a fairly equal mix of medium and Coelia green shade. This wash is important as long as it brings more depth and detail to the miniature. You can pay extra attention to the face to give it a more pronounced temper. Once the wash is dry, we can continue highlighting the figure. We begin with pure Ultron Grey that we spray at a 60-degree angle. You can concentrate the spray on the higher parts of the model. We can now apply our last airbrush highlight. We are applying an equal mix of white and Ultron Grey. You can concentrate this highlight on the parts that are more likely to catch the light. You can enhance some smaller details such as the scars by applying Coelia green shade directly on it. You can now apply some brush highlights on the face. You can begin with a mix of white and ultra grey that you can apply on the cheeks, on the brows and on the mouth. This allows to enhance the facial expression of the model. Finally, you can use pure white to highlight the most raised parts. The effect that I tried to create here is a skin stained by the blood. Indeed, I imagined that the ghouls are crawling in some pits full of dead bodies. To reach this effect, I'm using the red tone from Army Painter. I'm using this paint into 2 or 3 layers. To avoid a sharp boundary between the stained and the clean part, I'm using a clean and damped brush. I'm using this technique to smooth the transition between the 2 colors. Please note that I'm using the red color on the parts that are supposed to be in contact with the ground when the ghouls are crawling. Due to their diet, I imagine that the ghouls have the skin stained around the mouth too. To give the model a more furious look, I also used the red tone around the eyes. Later in the paint process, I realized that it was worth using the red tone around the hair on the back. This way, the transition between the hair and the skin looks more natural. You now have the whole skin painted. You can now proceed with the rest of the model. We will now proceed with all the base color of the rest of the model. We begin with the hair that I painted in corn red. On the loincloth and the beard, you can only paint the edge of the hair. You can now enhance the stain effect by stippling corn red. You can use an old brush that you will cut. You will use this brush to apply a really small amount of paint. The amount of paint that you will use is very similar to the amount that you should use for dry brushing. Then you can use pure black to paint the root of the hair that you will find on the loincloth and the beard. At this step, you shouldn't pay too much attention to the transition with the red. We are now using Rhinoxide to link the black and the red on the loincloth and the beard. As long as we will paint rusted metal, you can base coat all the metallic part with Rhinoxide. All the bones part will be base coated with some rock-art flesh. Finally, you can use some Vallejo khaki to base coat all the bandages and the ropes of the model. Once the base coat is dry, you can apply a wash of Agrax shade. You can apply this color everywhere except for the skin and the metal. Once again, this allows to give more depth and detail to the model. We will now proceed with the painting of the rusting metal. You can begin by stippling some scrag brown on the metallic parts. Using the stippling method allows to have a more irregular surface, which is typical from rust. For smaller parts, which are harder to reach, you can use an old detail brush. You can now stipple some Troll Slayer orange in smaller quantity. Now you can use some bright metal such as Stormhost Silver to enhance the sharpest edges of the weapon. The idea is to enhance the most solicited parts of the metal. To be more realistic, you can also add some scratches. We will now highlight the hair, beginning with our base color, which is corn red. You can edge highlight your model using the side of the brush. This method allows you to have quite accurate results. You can also highlight the stained skin with some corn red. Just make sure to leave some shade in the deepest recesses. You can do a second highlight using some Wazdaka red on the same zones, but restricting the areas. We will now highlight all the bone parts beginning with Rakarth flesh. To have a more natural result, you can stipple this highlight on the biggest surfaces. Then we can do a second highlight using a fairly equal mix of pallid wish flesh and Rakarth flesh. We of course use the same method of stippling. Finally, you can use pure pallid wish flesh to highlight the sharpest edges. Once again, you can stipple this color on the larger surface, but reducing the size of the areas. We will now highlight all the bandages, beginning with some khaki. Once again, I will advise you to let some shade in the deepest recesses. Now you can apply a fairly equal mix of ivory and khaki on the bandages. For a better result, I decided to apply the paint on the edges of the bandages. Now you can bring a final highlight with some pure ivory. I'm also using pure ivory to paint the eyes of the model. There is no need for a very small brush to paint the eye. Only a sharp edge is useful for this kind of work. Finally, I'm using pure ivory to paint the teeth of the model. I'm using Mechanicus Standard Grey to paint the base of the model. I'm using 2 thin coats to have a better result. Once the base coat is dry, I'm giving the base a good wash of Agrax Earth Shade. Once the wash is dry, you can dry brush some Dunstone on all the rock parts. This method allows to make the detail pop. You can now do a second lighter dry brush of ivory and Dunstone. Now all the stone is painted, you can paint all the bones the same way we used to paint the bone of the rest of the model. Finally, you can paint the rim of the base the color you want. I decided to paint it black. For the dripping blood effect, you can begin by gluing some fishing line to the points from where you decide the blood will drop. Once the glue is dried, you can cut the fishing line the size you want. You can now paint the fishing line with some Blood for the Blood God paint. The idea is to put a sufficient amount of paint to make a drop at the tip of the fishing line. You can also put some blood on the edge of the axe. You can apply an equal mix of medium and Blood for the Blood God on the overall base, except it for the biggest stone. You can now paint some blood marks on the biggest stones. Finally, to paint some blood sprays, I'm using a hard brush and a toothpick. This way, I'm spraying the blood all over the figure. You can see here the final render of the tutorial. You can use the same method to paint any ghoul you want from the Grymwatch Warband. You can use this paint guide to paint any ghoul you want for Flesh Eater course for the game Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If this is the case, you can put some thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.